Welcome to Business Buzz, where each week I discuss with my guests current topics that you ask me about. My name is Susan Spencer, and today's show is all about you. My guest is Jess Ponce, who is the ultimate coach and specializes in promoting business and individuals. It is clear to me that men are much better self-promoters than we are. So listen up, because you're going to learn from Jess how it's done. I am thrilled to have Jess on the show and want to welcome him to Business Buzz.
Thank you so much. It is such a joy to be here, and I'm really excited about this topic because I think it's really juicy.
I agree with that, Jess. And Jess knows what he's talking about, and that's why he's one of the people you want to meet. Women are really terrible at self-promotion. They generally say nothing about their skills and talents to others, especially their boss. This has to change if you want to move up in the business world. Jess, can you give our listeners a brief description of why you think men are so good at self-promotion and women need some more help than that?
Well, I think for several different reasons. One is social conditioning. From the moment we are boys, we are taught to speak about ourselves. And I think that we've developed a sort of sense or a skill, whereas girls and eventually women do not have that same practice. I also think that in the history of the workforce, when we hear people self-promote or when women hear men self-promote, it seems more natural to them, but also they're listening to these buzzwords of them saying things about themselves. And women don't speak in that same sort of language inherently. And what that results in, I believe, is in a lack of confidence. And I believe there are two different types of confidence when it comes to speaking. And here's where I think anybody can really learn how to self-promote. The first type of confidence is the ability to stand in a room, to stand in front of a group of people, and to be able to deliver a message that is both coherent and makes sense. You've developed a story, and you have that confidence to be able to stand in front of a room. The second type of confidence, I believe, is your conviction or the belief you have in the content that you're presenting. And this is where I think men and women really differ. Because men have the history of speaking about themselves, whereas women do not, when it comes to the idea of speaking about herself, she might lack that confidence. And I think focusing on the content and what your offer is or how you market yourself and what you are marketing is what really can make a difference.
Well, and women can be very passionate about what they think they're committed to, because they tend to be very straightforward, and if they're trying to sell a product, they better believe in it or they're going to come off awful. If they don't believe in it, they're going to come off very artificial, because we just don't have the ability to fake it as well. It's just not what we're used to. It doesn't feel comfortable for us. But if we have a product or a service and we really believe we can deliver, I think women can really put it home and put it home really well. So maybe it's a matter of kind of adjusting that belief in themselves and the passion that they have and trying to bring that out in something that is important. But when you get to the situation of talking about yourself, it's different than being passionate about a product you want to sell or to somebody else. So I think it's that what you're going to grapple with really is, and we're going to talk about it, and you give our listeners a chance to come up with a way to kind of teach themselves how to do this in a very positive way. It's the part that gets close to the self that's tricky. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to figure out, and I think that you've come up with a great idea to do that. So I'm hoping that we can talk about this in length, and you can give them a couple-step program, which will also be available on the website. You'll be able to see it at Women's Radio right within Jess's bio, so you'll see the steps in an abbreviated fashion, and it will allow you to kind of do this and try to do this exercise and work on it and see how it comes out. So, Jess, do you want to go over your test with them that you think is the way that they can kind of get through this process of getting that confidence level to talk about themselves?
Absolutely. And I commend people who don't fake it. I think that there might be a moment in which you can really find an opportunity to be authentic and to speak about something that you really believe. And I believe part of getting there is taking the I out of the conversation. The moment we begin, or the moment that women begin speaking about themselves, as you described, there might be a stumble. There might be something that clicks or something that they need to look at differently. And if you take the I out of the conversation versus saying, I do this, I do that, you're not speaking from a vantage point that has a lot of history in it. You know, it could have everything from social conditioning to what you think about women's, you know, place in the workplace, you know, all that kind of stuff. Just put that aside for a second and take a look at yourself differently. And what I'm suggesting is that you follow these steps. The first step is to consider yourself like a client, or consider yourself as a colleague, and speak about yourself in third person for a little bit. So look at yourself as this other thing versus the I thing or the me thing. And once you've done that, go to step 2, which is write down 10 different attributes, 10 different contributions, or 10 different qualities that this other person has. So for example, me, I wouldn't be speaking from an I vantage point. I was speaking from Jess. Jess is able to help people go through a certain process where they get unstuck by messages. He has worked with over 2,500 different celebrities. You know, those kinds of statements I would begin making about Jess. So write down 10 of those different things, and underneath that, leave a little space. What you're going to do is you're going to go back in that space and you're going to quantify and qualify what those characteristics or those attributes or those contributions are. When I speak about the work that I've done with celebrities, I put a number behind it. When I talk about the different sorts of on-air talent and or media experts, authors, and other people that I've worked with, I put a number behind that. So you write this list out, you take a moment, you look at it, and the third step, and not all of this has to be done in the same day or in the same setting. It could be done over a couple of days or over a week. The third step is you're going to write a narrative. You're going to write a bio from the 10 points that you've just discussed or that you've just figured out about this other person. And when you write the bio, what you're doing is you're telling a story about this person. You're creating a narrative. You're creating a dialogue and words and phrases about who this person is, what they have to contribute, and how that contribution has impacted other people. After you've done that, put that bio aside for at least a day, and when you come back to it, you might be surprised at the person you're looking at. And the reason why I think this exercise is really significant is when you take the I out of the conversation and you look at who this person is objectively, you realize that there's some great content there. There's some great stuff to speak about. And you have something to market that's different from that internal conversation that you're having.
Well, I think women also judge themselves very harshly. They look at themselves and say, well, I'm not an expert. I may have gone and got my PhD, and I may have been working with somebody in the Department of Labor, and that person, I was their right-hand person, but that doesn't make me an expert. Well, guess what? It does. But if you don't think it does, then you're not going to rate yourself that way. So I would say in Jess's 10-step attributes, do you quantify them? For example, if you did something 30 times with 30 different people, do you make sure you put that quantity in? Is that what you talked about before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you need to, for yourself, you need to have a success story. You need to have a measure that says, this isn't something I believe or I think. This is something that I know. And that whole self-dialogue about I'm not an expert, the moment you start telling that story, you're living that story. And people treat you the way you tell them to treat you. And if you're saying I'm not an expert, then no one's ever going to believe you are an expert. But if you turn that around and say, I'm able to help 30 people achieve this goal, wow, that person has something that I want. And that's what you want to talk about. And it's not fabricating anything. It's not making anything up. And it's not exaggerating. It's hard fact. But until you put it on a piece of paper and look at it, you may not believe it.
And I think that's a great point. Would you recommend that they put what they believe is the most important ingredient or attribute that they exemplify, or does it not matter?
I think that eventually you want to get to that step. And
okay.
I say 10 as a number because 10 it always seems like just enough. It seems like a lot, but not too much. If you get 12 things, if you get 15 things, if you get 20 things or 40 things, all the better. From there, you can look at it and you can say, well, these things I feel are most significant because these have really successful measures, or something that you may not have thought about before really could become significant. But I think if you put everything on there, it'll give you a really good roadmap of things to look at.
Well, my option always is for women is to put it all down. Think of any possible thing that you think makes you special, unique, and would give an attribute that's something significant out in the work field. Put them all down. Every possible, even stuff that's outside the box or inside the box, whatever way it is. And when you do that, then you can start looking at it more particularly. Maybe it'll jog your memory with some other ideas as well, because the more is better if it's authentic. If it's authentic and you know it's true and you're comfortable with it, get it on the paper. And then you can narrow it down if you feel you have to. But I think that the way for women is to really try to quantify in as large a circle as they can what it is they believe they bring to the table, because they will tend to underestimate the value of things. So if they start with this imaginary person who has these qualities, the more is better, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And you know what? You may be surprised in the feedback that you get. For example, myself, with my background in television, I thought that the significance of working with celebrities and doing stuff for people on air might not be that significant for people in the business world. When I started speaking about my background and what I did, that was something that a lot of executives and business people really liked, because I offered something in a vantage point that was different than they were getting other places. My point in that story is that until you put it down, until you throw everything against the wall and look at it, you may not know what somebody else could find attractive because you've already edited it in your head. You said, that's not valuable. That's not important. Well, you know what? Put it down on paper. Look at it. Quantify it. And with this bio and with this list, it's a work in progress. As you begin speaking about yourself, as you begin speaking about the qualities that you have, you will find out what people like. You will find out what's sexy. You will find out what you feel really comfortable sharing. And from there, you're even going to get stories that are really going to captivate people. And the great asset that women have that us men could really learn from, and that is the ability to listen. I think about when men self-promote, and it's like they go on, and they're talking about all these different things, and you just want to get a word in edgewise, and they're not listening to you. They're not listening to the audience. Women, on the other hand, because they want to be connected and they're good listeners, are able to communicate with their audience. And when that audience sparks to something, they might have a story to back it up. They might have got some other credentials or other anecdotes that are really going to drive that point home. I say all of this because I think women have some natural attributes that really, once they try this exercise, they're going to find out really, come to the table.
Well, I agree with that. And what I'd like to do, Jess, and I hope you'll come back on the show, maybe the next time you can come back and say, okay, now we did kind of the preliminary steps. What do we need to do after the preliminary? How do we test it? How do we do a shakeout? How do we figure out what has to be next so we can kind of get our confidence level up and prove to ourselves that this is actually something that we're comfortable with? So I hope that you'll come back, and I hope we can come up with another show that is part of a process for us in a series with you at the helm. And I thank you for sharing your knowledge.
You are welcome, and I hope that this does resonate with a lot of women out there, and it would be an honor and a pleasure to come back. So thank you for that offer.
Thanks, Jess, and thanks for bringing a unique perspective that is one that women need very badly. And I hope that if they have any questions, they'll write into me. If you email me and I use your comment on the air, I'll send you an autographed copy of my book, Briefcase Essentials. So until next time, I've been there, done that, and now it's your turn.